I wanted to share a video today to expand a little bit on the dynamics which can play out sometimes between a coach and their client. I've got another video which is linked to this where I talk about the survive and the thrive parts of our brain, or the kind of modes of operating, which in the language of positive intelligence, which is something that I'm very familiar with and a big fan of, they use the term sage and saboteur. So sage, or kind of wise person, and then saboteur. And I'm going to attach a link to this video so you can go and have a look at the positive intelligence in a bit more detail. And there's a 10-minute assessment that you could do to find out your saboteurs. And I'm going to today talk very specifically about the victim saboteur. And so when I use the term victim, I use it very consciously and very intentionally in the context of positive intelligence. I'm not labeling someone as being a victim. That's very different. What I'm talking about is someone that has the victim traits, sabotaging traits. And when you understand a little bit more about positive intelligence, and one of the reasons why I love it is that you will see that the traits that someone who demonstrates the victim saboteur kind of have and possess, their kind of unique sort of traits and kind of soul essence, are, very, very kind, very emotionally kind of intelligent people, very tuned in. They can quite often be highly sensitive people, empaths, very tuned in to others, pick up on the energy of others. They're really kind of feeling intuitive, people. And that's when they're in sage mode, that they are very good at kind of understanding and intuiting and picking up on what's going on for other people, and using that in a healthy kind of authentic way to kind of draw out insights in a very kind of positive way. They're also capable of deep introspection, really understanding the kind of process of emotions, and how we kind of learn and read emotions. There's a huge amount of kind of untapped wisdom there that in our kind of Western society we don't really value, and something I'm really passionate about trying to kind of inject back into society. But that when victim saboteurs are in their sabotaging mode, so when they're getting kind of hijacked by their saboteurs, the victim can present as low self-worth. They can sometimes get into a kind of situation where they feel like they kind of uniquely challenged or uniquely flawed, or they're the kind of only one that is, that is experiencing what they're experiencing, that nobody else understands. And they very often fall into the trap. And I say this is someone that has the victim saboteur as one of my top three. My very top one is hyperachiever, followed by victim, followed by pleaser. And what I've come to recognise is that what happens is when we're in those moments when I'm getting kind of attacked by my saboteur, and I'm in that kind of hyper sabotaging mode, that I am outsourcing my sense of self to somebody else. So where I'm maybe looking for answers, particularly if I'm facing a difficult decision or a choice, that I sometimes fall into the trap of not trusting myself, or I have done in the past before I really engaged with this work. And what that means is then that we're kind of going around looking for somebody else to kind of solve the problem, somebody else to kind of save us, somebody else to kind of fix us, because we sort of feel like we don't have the capacity to do it for ourselves. That's a learned kind of helplessness that is picked up usually during childhood, those early development years before our prefrontal cortex is fully developed. I talk a little bit about that in another video. And the reason I wanted to share this in the context of coaching, and also in the context of kind of advice. And this is one of the things I'm really passionate about when I talk about ethical practices, and the name of my business being Integrity Executive Coaching, is how kind of flippantly we're kind of conditioned to kind of request or receive or give out advice. And the trouble with advice is that it's usually very well-meaning. There sometimes occasions where someone's giving advice for the wrong reasons, but in the main, advice is generally given and received with a positive intention. But the point is that nobody else is in your unique situation. I talk about this in one of my kind of universal myths videos, which is available to my coaching clients. But these kind of universal myths that somebody else has got the roadmap for what we're uniquely, singularly trying to achieve in our lives based on our unique experiences, upbringings, our unique qualities, gifts, strengths, preferences, but also our hopes, dreams, and fears for the future. Nobody else is trying to do what we are uniquely trying to do. And what happens is, with someone that's got the victim saboteur, when they're in that kind of mode where they're being hijacked and they're kind of operating from that victim mindset, what they're effectively doing, and this is also unconscious, for the most part. This is why this work is so important, because it makes the unconscious conscious, and then it means we can start to manage it differently, and we can start to take different actions, and we can start to operate from our kind of thrive part of our brain, our sage part of our kind of personality, rather than from saboteur mode. But what happens sometimes in a coach and client relationship is that the client unconsciously is outsourcing their sense of self and their self-worth to the coach, as if the coach has access to kind of superior wisdom or knowledge about the client's specific situation. And I've experienced it. I'm in the kind of privileged position where I've been a client or a kind of coachee, or I've been mentored or supervised by somebody that I consider kind of more experienced than me. But I've also been on the other side where I'm the coach, and I've experienced it from a client. And all of this is happening unconsciously. I really want to stress these are not kind of conscious behaviours in the moment, until we start to kind of bring them into our conscious mind. And what can happen is, and I've experienced this now as a coach, is that clients will sometimes say, well, I didn't achieve these things, and somehow, I'm accountable as the coach for not getting them to a point that they perhaps wanted to get to, and perhaps that they are frustrated with the process of coaching because they feel like they're not making the progress that they want, and the frustration then is projected onto the coach or the client as the kind of person that's responsible. And what's happening in those moments is that those people in those moments are kind of outsourcing their worth and the solutions to the problems that they're experiencing to something outside of themselves, which means they're not fully accountable because they're being hijacked by their victim saboteur. Now, I just want to caveat very, very clearly that I have a coaching agreement in place which always very clearly sets out aims and expectations of myself, but also of clients, and that's signed before we enter into any coaching agreement, before any money is taken as well, so that my clients always know what they can expect, and there are always opportunities for them to provide feedback, but also to finish a series of coaching if it's not working for the client. I'm really passionate about upholding the ethical kind of credibility of my profession as well as my business. So I'm never here to kind of missell to a client something that I can't deliver. But I'm also very clear with my clients that they have to do the work, and part of the work is understanding in those moments where they're looking to somebody else to kind of fix their problems for them or to give them the answer. And that's not what coaching is. Coaching isn't about giving advice. It's about helping you to find the answers for yourselves by giving you the tools and showing you how to use them. And a phrase that I use often, and I've been using it very, very, very often, very frequently, very recently, is give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, but teach a man to fish and he can feed himself for a lifetime. And that's really what coaching is about. It's about giving you the tools that you can then take away and operate autonomously, and that includes learning how to hold yourself to account. So I wanted to set that. I hope that's been clear. I'm always happy to take comments or answer any questions if that has prompted any. But I just thought I would share that because it's such an interesting dynamic that can play out sometimes, and it felt relevant to share it today.